want to tell you something about the newest Bareos 25 release we just released on 1st of December. And as things work out, we already today had the 25.01 version because we had a small bug in the Hyper-V plugin for restore, but that was quickly fixable. So we have the newest version out today, now without any bugs left, at least not what we know of. Okay, so what I want to tell you today about is one thing I wanted to tell you what changes we did in the policy of our binary repositories. Then I would like to tell you a bit about the changes regarding the configuration that we ship with Bareos. Then I want to mention or describe a bit about Barri, the Windows disaster recovery tool that's new in Bareos 25. Also in Bareos 25, now we have a Hyper-V plugin that can do backups of Hyper-V virtual machines. Also, we have the new feature of the Proxmox plugin that can backup and restore Proxmox virtual machines and Proxmox containers also. Also, we changed a bit in the bpipe plugin, and also we added a runtime operating system recognition to the daemons. And what all this is about, we will have a look. So first, let's have a look at the binary repositories, or at the repositories of Bareos that are available. So the most important one, and the one that probably everybody knows, is our GitHub source code repository. Everything we do is available in the repository. Also, our whole development happens there. So someone who's interested can see all the pull requests, all the changes we are doing to the source code whenever we do it. All branches that we ever released and all changes are available there. Also, we do not have any missing or empty files like other open core software sometimes has. Everybody who is able to do self-compilation of the software can do it there, and all features and everything that we do is available there. As we always claim, Bareos is 100% open source software, and nothing has changed since we started Bareos in version 12. The second thing we have is the Bareos community repositories that contain binaries of our software. So there you can access the current build of the stable branch, which is moving whenever we have a new patch in the current version. You can also directly get access to the development branch, which is the master branch, and this is in the next subdirectory. What you cannot access there is we don't have minor versions and no older versions of Bareos, so only the current build is available. What we changed in Bareos 25 is that we now do not have binary packages of the Hyper-V, Barri, and Proxmox plugin. For now, we only ship this in the subscription repository. But as I said, everything, all the source code is still available in the GitHub repo. And the Bareos subscription repository, overview over that. So the subscription repository contains all supported and end-of-life releases, including minor versions. So it's also possible to roll back to a prior version in case the current version makes a problem. It is a prerequisite for support that you can buy with Bareos. You need a subscription contract with a login. And since Bareos 25, as I said, we now have binary packages of all features, which is not available now in the community repositories. And everyone who wants to test one of those features can just contact us via bareos.com/try, or also directly contact any one of us via email or Martin, or via the contact form on the website. We are happily to give you a test to evaluate the features. Or of course, if you can, anybody who can do it can compile the features himself. Any questions about this? Okay, then I go on. So changes in Bareos 25. A part of the changes is that we did changes for the configuration. So one thing that is quite handy for everyone often creating new configuration files is that the config directories now are setgid Bareos. What does that mean? That means that if you create a new configuration file in etc Bareos and you didn't watch out, it could happen that if you created this as root, that the daemons are not able to read this configuration file. So you created a new file, wanted to reload it, and it says, I cannot open this file. And this problem is now avoided with this change, because every file that is created somewhere in the Bareos configuration will automatically get the group Bareos, and it will automatically be readable. Another change that we have in Bareos 25 now is that we can automatically create auto changes for disk devices. So why is this required? So if you have a single file device on disk, it can only handle one job at a time. But as disk, of course, can do multiple IOs at the same time, before we documented how you can do this with a virtual disk changer, and that needed to be done manually before. So you had to configure a virtual auto changer and then configure the devices that this virtual auto changer should use. And then these devices had to be connected to the auto changer. In Bareos version 19, we already enhanced this option, or made it easier to create it, so that you could automatically multiply the devices. So you only had to create one device, and you could say, oh, I need 20 of those, and it would automatically create 20 identical devices. And since version 25, the count directive in the device will automatically both create the auto changer, the devices, and also the auto changer. The nice thing about this is that it's very easy to set up a virtual auto changer with as many virtual disk devices as you want, just by setting a number in the device. And it is also very handy because you can simply replace a single, an old single device with a new multi-changer without changing anything but the number of sub-devices you want to create, because even the file device name stays the same. So to show how easy this is now that the new default configuration, instead of having a single device, now automatically deploys an auto changer, and everything works out like before. Any questions about this feature? I hope that it became clear what it is about. Okay, another thing that we changed in Bareos 25 regarding the configuration is that we now the default configuration that we deploy is not part of the packages anymore. Why did we change this? Because the standard Linux packaging mechanisms have features for configuration files that often create problems when we do updates. For example, if a configuration file that is deployed by the package was deleted by a customer, and then an upgrade was redeployed, then a new file, the file has been recreated again. And if the customer, for example, in the test environment or in this production environment, created another file with the same name, then you could result in a non-starting daemon, because you have 2 times the same definition. We had different other problems that all arose of the fact how the packages handle configuration files. So what did we do now? So the configuration files are no longer part of the packages themselves, but after the package has been installed, the configuration is deployed afterwards via an install script. How does it work? So the default configuration that we deploy during installation now are situated in user-lib Bareos default config. So it is available for the administrator to check what would be the default configuration that would be deployed. The installation is done via the Bareos config script, and this is automatically called during package installation. So if you have the first installation of the system and you don't have any configuration already, it will install the configuration as it happened before. But in case you already have a configured system, it will automatically recognize that there is already a etc Bareos director configuration directory and will not deploy the default configuration anymore. So everything that you configured as administrator before will stay exactly as it was before. And in case you want to update it or implement the new features that we have, then you have to do it manually, or you can also ask the Bareos config script to update the configuration that you have, but it will not happen automatically. You have to do it manually, which usually is what an administrator wants, because you don't want to have the system not starting anymore because you don't know, without knowing why that happened. Let me quickly see what I have here on the, yeah, exactly. So the existing configuration is kept. You can redeploy it if you want to by hand by calling the script. You can update the current configuration and it avoids all the problems we had before. Another problem that we had with it, which I didn't mention yet, is that it was not possible for us to do changes in the default configuration, because it would then, the way that the configurations are deployed, create a lot of problems. And with the new mechanism, we are also able to adapt the default configuration, for example, which we did, that we now have the auto changer instead of a single drive.
Yeah, we had a question from Tame. It was, any plans on adding more example configs for more special use cases in the future? And yes, exactly. That's one of the reasons why we changed it, so we can add this to the default configs, but it won't bloat your normal config directory on updates. So does that answer your question, or any other questions, either here or in the chat? Just remember to unmute, because all participants are unmuted by default.
Okay, then I go on, right? We don't have other questions. Okay, then the next thing I want to talk about is Barri, the Bareos recovery imager, which is our new Windows disaster recovery solution. So how does it work? It is implemented as a file daemon plugin, and it can create a disaster recovery image like a normal backup job. It backs up all mass storage devices on a Windows machine via VSS snapshot, and then backups only the used blocks of the disk. So yeah, how is the architecture? So it has 4 components. The most important part is the FD plugin that can be loaded into the file daemon on Windows, and as I already said, it can create a disaster recovery backup just like any other backup while the Windows machine is running. Then there's also a command line tool for Windows that can do backups and restores. Then there's a file daemon plugin for Linux, which is intended to do the disaster recovery in case of the machine needs to be disaster recovered. And this can then be started inside of a live Linux machine, for example. And there's also a command line tool on Linux that also can do recovery running out of Linux, for example. So how does the backup operation work? So the FD plugin on Windows starts the backup. It will then create VSS snapshots of all Windows file systems and make sure that they are in a consistent state. It will back up the partition table and all file systems. It will back up only used blocks out of the file systems that have been snapshotted. And all this information is then backed up and stored in a so-called Barri file, which is an own format that contains all the information that's required to recover a full disk, for example, including all the partition table and all other information that's required to completely recover a Windows machine. Quick overview how the backup operation works. So the Windows machine is running, which is the nice thing about it. So you don't have to shut it down to make a disaster recovery image. The mass storage is then backed up with the common part, both of the CLI command line tool and of the plugin. And then the plugin would then directly store the Barri file information to the storage daemon and to the storage as any backup usually would work. And also it's possible to use the Barri CLI tool, for example, to create the same Barri file image of the system and store it, for example, on a USB key, on a network drive, or wherever you want to put it. Then the normal way of recovering a system, or at least the envisioned way of recovering a system that we thought probably makes most sense, is that you start a Linux live system, for example, that contains the Bareos file daemon and the Linux version of the Barri file daemon plugin, and it will then it is then able to receive the Barri file during restore and write the information direct to the mass storage devices, including repartitioning, creating the file systems, and putting all data back. And after the live Linux has recovered the data, you can just reboot the machine and will start up and have the same status as it had when it was backed up. Another option we have, for example, we had this with the pilot client that we created the solution for, is unfortunately the hardware that this customer had a very special driver for his mass storage devices that was not part of Linux yet, of the Linux kernel. So unfortunately, in a Linux live system, the storage devices were not visible. So it's also possible to create a Windows PE system and recover the Barri file out of the Windows live system. That of course needs to have the storage drivers, and then it's also possible to recover directly on the live Windows system. Exactly. And what also the Barri CLI tool can do, it can also, instead of recovering the disk file, the files directly to the disk device, it is also possible to create VADX files that can then be used from Hyper-V, for example. So it's also possible to use Barri for a physical to virtual migration, or the other way around if required. Yeah, and the quick overview how the data flow is. So during restore, the Barri information then comes back from the Bareos server, goes to the plugin, to the library, and then is stored onto the mass storage. Or alternatively, if you use the command line tool, then you have the Barri file on a USB key or network drive, wherever you can access it. And then the CLI tool can also write back the backup to the mass storage via the common part of the Barri library. Okay, so far about the Barri disaster recovery. Any questions about that?
Remember to unmute if you want to ask a question by clicking the microphone symbol, or you can
just write into the chat.
Yeah.
Or we can.
Yeah, Philipp, can you maybe precise what kind of Windows version we tested, and we already certify the usage of Barri, for example?
Yes, so I tested Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows Server 2022, Windows Server 2025. That's, I think, everything I got hold of. And as far as I understand, the VSS API is the same, at least, I think, since Windows 7 or something. Yeah, so I don't think that any currently supported Windows version, at least theoretically, should not work. But of course, that is to find out. But I think at least all versions that are currently supported should work.
Okay, yeah, 5 minutes left, but yeah, I think we would also be a bit flexible. So
Yeah, so the other things are not so long, I think. So yes, I think I have just one slide of the Hyper-V plugin. So yes, we do have the Hyper-V plugin now. It can back up virtual machines that are running on Microsoft Hyper-V. It can be both full and incremental backups. It uses resilient change tracking, so which is in the end like VMware, the change block tracking. So it understands what blocks of the virtual device have been used at all and will not back up any unused blocks from that, which saves usually a lot of space. It can back up both generation 1 and 2 virtual machines. It can back up disks in the VHD and VHDX format. And it can both recover just the disks if required, and it can also directly recreate a complete virtual machine if desired. And also it does not collide if you recreate the same virtual machine with the same name, even if the original is still running, because it recreates automatically new UIDs and will not have the same names of the disks, for example. Any questions about that? So if not, then I'll quickly go on. Then quick overview of the Proxmox plugin. So the Proxmox plugin can back up Proxmox guests, both of the format of virtual machine, which is KVM, and also the container format can be backed up. The restore can go directly to a new guest so that it recreates a virtual machine or a container with the same name and will then have exactly the same content. And also it's possible to restore the backup to disk, and then it can be recovered through the Proxmox GUI, which is easier than to change, for example, the storage or other network settings or something. Then you can do this interactively and change things during restore. Currently, it is only able to do full backups and not incremental or differential backups. Any questions about that? To include Proxmox node in cluster backups, you mean to back up the Proxmox cluster itself?
Yes, okay.
So the Proxmox cluster itself should be absolutely no problem, and I guess even easier than what we are now doing, because I think it is possible to back up every file in the Proxmox, I guess, via just normal file backup. And the interesting thing is during recovery, if the whole Proxmox cluster is gone, to recreate the cluster itself. But usually setting up the cluster is not so complicated, and most of the configuration that it has, I think, is in the etc PVE shared storage, and that should be possible right now already to back up. But honestly, I didn't look into that. We only looked into the backup of the virtual machines.
So as far as I remember, the Proxmox nodes are just Debian systems, and so it would require to install the Bareos FD on that, and then
yes, that's already required to.
So yeah,
that is already required to
do
run
the
Proxmox plugin. So that's exactly how it works.
Yeah.
So yes, I didn't try to do it honestly, but I'm quite sure that it should be possible to, as I say, I think all shared cluster information is in etc PVE, and that should be possible to back up. But yeah, Karl-Heinz Knapp wanted to say something.
We do this several years without any issue. That's no problem. You can back up very easy the complete node.
Yeah, cool. Thanks a lot for that information.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, then quick overview what we did with the bpipe plugin. Just what is the bpipe plugin? It is a very flexible plugin to quickly prototype or create backups of whatever tool you have that creates data out of standard out and is able to consume the same data back in standard in. So even you could use a database dump or something there, and it just on backup executes a script and will consume what this script or binary puts to standard out, and on restore it will start the same or another binary and feed the backup into standard in. That's how the bpipe plugin works. And what it was not able to do before is if you write a script, you could not find out if this is currently an incremental backup, a full backup, or something like that. The call was independent. And to be able to do a bit more elaborate things with it, we now also set environment variables when calling the binary, so that you now in a shell script or whatever can just look into the following environment variables to find out what's going on, what kind of backup you are doing. So it's the client name, the job ID. What is very interesting, I think most, is the job level, so that you know it's an incremental, differential, or full, and also the since time, so that you can, whatever your script does, you can yourself find out what has changed since that timestamp, for example, and what you want to now back up additionally or not. So it's quite handy to at least quickly prototype things, and that's also now available in the bpipe plugin.
There was one more question regarding Proxmox when using Proxmox Ceph for storage. I think when it's the current way that our plugin works is storage agnostic. So it shouldn't matter where the virtual machine or container data is stored. But not if I don't know if it's even possible to use this Proxmox Ceph stuff for additional storage purposes. That would for sure not be backed up. Does that answer the question, or?
That is definitely not the focus of the plugin. So the focus of the plugin is really backing up virtual machines so that you can restore them. Backing up the Ceph storages themselves would be another focus. So
exactly.
it's like any Ceph storage. If you want to back it up, that's a different thing to do.
Virtual machines residing on Proxmox Ceph storages is supported, and
yes, that's the nice thing about the API they have for backup that we are calling, or in the end the binaries that we're calling. They do all the logic in the background, no matter where the machine resides, and we just get a backup image from them. So that works quite well.
Okay, one more question. Is there already a Ceph plugin for that, or is there any plan for one? A general Ceph plugin. So no, we don't currently have a general Ceph plugin. We had one in the past, but
no. We didn't have a Ceph plugin. We had a CephFS plugin, which we don't have anymore because you don't need it, because you can just use the FD to back up a CephFS. And for everything else, usually backing up the Ceph objects, so just fetching the Rados objects, is not really useful. So it depends on the application you are running on top of Ceph to get meaningful backups, and we can just ship plugins for that. But simply backing up the Ceph objects probably does not help anyone.
Okay, Philipp, continue, please.
Okay, I think it's only one thing left. So what we also changed is, before, the information about the running operating system that we showed in the client, for example, was either collected during build, so like a fixed string in the binaries, or on Windows we used runtime information. But unfortunately, there's no real easy API on Windows to find out what kind of Windows you're currently running. And now in Bareos 25, we get the information out of the Windows registry, and on Linux and Unix we use etc OS release if available, which is on most Unixes, and otherwise we use the uname system call. And this has quite some advantages, because now the real info of the client is displayed. So in case you, for example, run OS updates, you also can see the history in the backup history. You can see that, for example, the operating system of a machine has changed. And also on Windows now we get the right information, as you can see here. So on Windows 24, it always said it was a 2012 standard edition server, which was not true, because here, for example, it was a 2022, and that's now also correct. So the information that you get is fetched or collected during the startup of the daemon, and then you have the right information in the job logs and in the status commands.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks a lot. Here we
that's
have some...
it from my side.
Yeah, great. Thank you
much.
very much, Philipp. I think it's time now to hand over to Lukas Knapp.
So then, good afternoon, everybody. Just wanted to give you a short overview today about the NIS2 directive, and also want to introduce myself. So my name is Lukas Knapp. I'm director of EDNT. We are a IT company founded over 40 years ago next to Frankfurt. Are an owner-managed family business with 15 employees, and mainly active in 2 areas. On the one hand side, you see that we offer IT solutions for medium-sized and large enterprises, so mainly private cloud computing services, backup as a service, VoIP solutions. And on the other hand, we offer open source engineering services, of course, for Bareos, Fusion PBX, Proxmox, and OpenSense. Today we want to talk about NIS2 and want to give a spotlight on the field of backups. First of all, we have to say NIS2 is not purely a compliance exercise. The directive forces companies to do something that should always have been best practice in the past. The ability to recover quickly and reliably after a cyber attack. And this is precisely where the quality of the backup determines the survival of a company. So the focus is more on recoverability and business continuity. And relevant is it for companies which are bigger than 50 employees or have 10 million in revenue or higher, or even some specific industries. Yes, I see many of you maybe already saw this list. This is the requirement list for backups in the NIS2 directive. So NIS2 does not really define what to use, but it rather gives a clear list of requirements. For example, regular complete backups, that at least one backup must be located outside the main network of a company. The RTO, recovery time objective, and RPO, recovery point objective, should be defined. That backups must be checked regularly for integrity. Restore tests are mandatory, also with a documentation of the whole backup process, and also required access protection and encryption. Yes, as I said, I think many of you have seen this list, but the key point is that the NIS2 directive does not really ask whether you have this, but whether you can prove that you have it and that you do it correctly. I wanted to have a focus on 2 things today, mainly the offsite backup and also the sufficient resources which are needed. So I come to the challenges which we see when we are outside consulting or supporting companies when introducing their backup services. So we see, or we have the planning and operations stuff in companies, mainly the IT department. We have systems which are monitored with a couple of tests. We have locations for redundancy in companies, but when talking about the reality, we often have to see that the backup is managed on the site by someone who is responsible for something different, like the server management or something else. backups are very often in the same network. A really big issue is that we do not have dedicated test windows to do restore tests, because the main reason because people are struggling with that is the time, and due to that, we also see that there isn't a really good documentation. And even if there is something like space in a building or site for a second location, it's mainly not used. So we see that many companies meet backup requirements formally, but do not operationally match those requirements. And the NIS2 directive forces us to allocate resources for testing, verification jobs, automation, and also the redundancy topic. And in practice, we often see that Bareos is running really well, but no one has time for restore tests, integrity checks, or the offsite redundancy. And in the next folder, I just wanted to give you a short impression how we have done that. We have 2 physically separated data centers, which are certified by the German offices TÜV. We have a whole replication between both data centers. We have in our data center 2 immutable storage layers, and we have for our whole backup and Bareos instance an isolated management layer. So we have a 2-tier Bareos architecture and meet several NIS requirements. For example, the resource availability, the separation of security domains, offsite redundancy by the 2 physically separated data centers, temporary resistant storage, and we also have operationally tested restore capabilities done and implemented to match all these requirements. But this is, as I said, really tough. Also, or especially for the medium-sized businesses which have small IT departments. So this is where we try to help and operate in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland for many companies who are implementing Bareos. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a short input of the NIS2. I think many things are already known for you. And I don't want to steal the Bareos guys today, the show, by presenting their latest version 25. And if you just feel free to contact me in LinkedIn or just hit me up via email or phone call if you want to talk or discuss about Bareos or the Bareos architecture we implemented, or have any questions. Really, just ask me. I'm happy for every contact. That was already everything I wanted to say. Many thanks to Bareos for the chance today, just to give a quick overview over our Bareos and NIS2 topics.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Lukas. I think even if, we have seen that only medium and large companies or certain sectors fall under the obligation to comply with NIS2, but I think it is what we've seen in your presentation is really valuable because it's really some best practice stuff to do restore tests, to have redundancy, to check the consistency of the backup. That's important for any backup environment. So really, thank you very much. Any further questions? Yes, Karl-Heinz, please.
Yeah, one point is important. We use now Bareos 10 years. And we had, in the meantime, really only good experience with it. and that's something. It's a long time, and we had a lot of time where we had to use the backup for recovery, and it have saved us a lot of time, the life, and also the customers were happy, and that's something which we are proud of, because it's one of the products where we know it's just working, and it's important to have products like that. 10 years is a long time, so it's a very good experience.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karl-Heinz. I mean, yeah, it's really important because often the requirement is to store backups for very long periods of time, and and you want still be able to restore it in 2030 or 2035. So yeah, it's important that we have a good, rock solid, maintained software for that. Any further questions? Any no matter what topic it's about, so we can also start with open discussion now. Also, any feedback is welcome for sure. Either unmute and speak or just ask in this chat if you want. I remember, yeah, there was one thing regarding backing up Ceph, what we already have. I mean, it always depends on how you use Ceph. There are many ways, like Andreas already mentioned, CephFS. But Ceph also provides Rados GW, which provides S3 compatible access to S3, and we can do backups of that using our S3 plugin, which is named DPL Compat, by the way, now. So that is also a way. Oh, here we have another question. Is there a roadmap or any documentation about planned changes or features for 26 and forth? Yeah, that's a good question. We are happy that we just released 25, and we did not yet. We for sure did have to postpone some features that we already dreamt of some time that did not make it into 26, and yeah. Maybe
that's exactly what we will do next. So now everything was concentrated getting 25 out, which got a bit delayed, but not too much. So I'm quite happy with that. And yeah, the next thing that we do is we have to look into what we have in our backlogs. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of things we want to do, and we have to exactly organize and plan things for the next year and what we want to get done for 26. So we don't have it yet, but we will work on that probably the rest of the year. And somewhere in January, I guess we will have a plan what we want to put into 26. But if you have good ideas, what is a super feature for Bareos that you are always waiting for, we are always happy to get ideas. You can send them directly to us, or we also on GitHub, you can create a discussion and say, yeah, I would like to have a feature for something. And it's always good for us to understand what customers and users need. And we're always happy to get feedback. So if you have ideas, please tell us.
And normally our roadmap depends on our customers or our customer wishes and what we have feared really often. The last time is Proxmox. So a lot of environments are going to Proxmox. That's also the reason why we have now introduced the first version of the Proxmox plugin, but probably we will also continue working on this for the next release, depending on the feedback we receive. So if people is really using this, or this is just a wish list.
And of course, we're also always happy to implement features that customers need and that they may have some money for us to get it done, because of course, without money, we also cannot do much. And we already have quite some features that we implemented for customers by getting funded development. And that's always good because we can bring the product forward for everyone, and the customer also gets a solution for his problem. And that is quite easy with our product and with us, and probably not so easy with other commercial vendors, because you will not get direct contact to the developers like you can with us. So if you have a feature that really is missing and that will, for example, save you a lot of money, and you would be willing to give us a part of that to get it done, we are very happy. That's always a good option for us also. And of course, it makes features much faster to get implemented than if you just have a question for it, and we have to see how we get it done. So that's just
exactly, that's what I wanted to mention, that we have had successfully projects with funded development in the past, and yeah, that's for sure also always welcome.
Yeah, for example, most of the VMware features we have now have been funded.
Yeah, that was funded development. We still support the VMware plugin for sure, even if we noticed that due to the fact that VMware was bought by Broadcom, and they have implemented some crazy licensing changes which increase the cost tremendously. So we see a lot of customers looking and migrating to alternatives, but yeah. However, the VMware plugin is still supported for the time being. And oh, I think yeah. There is the work in progress regarding improving overhauling of the web UI, eConsole, and or REST API. Yeah, I think that's something for Philipp or Andreas.
So yes, plans we do have, but yes, it's always a question of resources. So web UI, definitely we want to do something about eConsole in principle, I think is quite good. And the REST API, yes, it's that is more experimental. So the question would be from my side, are you using it? Is it doing what you want? What are the things you are missing?
And Gilbert Giancelli has a question, please. Or wants to...
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay, here I am, yeah. Question about the web interface. Do you have plans to implement some browsable methods for the file set? You know, like I know it from Spectrum Protect, where you can in the program itself can choose a different folder structure you want right now to take into a backup or something else. Right now you have to define it really different, but yeah.
It kind of accesses the file system of a client and then lets you choose what you want to back up.
Exactly, yeah. When you choose in Spectrum Protect, you can choose. You can make it per default, which where the files are coming from, but we can also like browse it, the local file system, and choose like a directory or directory structure or single files you want to have like backup or archive with specific definitions. That you see what you have, and you want to have like going out of the normal like predefined file sets.
Yes, that's one of the different things that we definitely have on our ideas map, but that would mostly make sense that this is a part of a tool to configure the whole system, and that's something that we are thinking about how we can implement this in a good way, because the file set is one part of all the other parts of the system, and doing this inside of the director doesn't make much sense, because the director is only one part of the system, and if we want to make it configurable completely, then we also should be able to create the whole configuration of the whole system. In principle, what you are asking for is already possible inside of the file daemon, because you can also interactively feed the file daemon with the current file set it should look for, and then it could show you what is there. But I understand what you're looking for, but that would be a part of a tool that is something I think about that we should have to create configuration for the whole system, and then also be able to somehow interactively determine what files to back up. But interestingly enough, sorry?
I meant over the web UI, as easy as possible for
Yes,
the
I
persons.
understand, but the web UI currently is only talking to the director, and the director is not the right place to do it. At least this part that you say maybe, but not the whole configuration. And the other thing is that, yes, that's something that I already also thought about a lot, but it is interesting that this question really is seldomly called, because most people that are using Bareos are usually are happy that they can automatically create the file sets, make sure that everything what needs to be backed up is centrally configured and not someone is clicking yes and no, and in the end when you need to do the restore someone clicked the wrong things and it's not there. But I understand what you want, and that's something that probably would be a nice feature. Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the environment. I'm working in a scientific environment where people make really large amounts of data, and sometimes you cannot really specify that the data is always in the right place where I defined it in the file specs. And so it's easily to say, okay, I have my data on this drive or this subfolder because it's like 20 terabytes, and I want not to move it into the file specs we have predefined.
Yeah, but so Bareos is so flexible that something that what you are asking for already is possible, because we can both create the file list to be included via script. We can read the file list from a file on the client side. So in your environment, you could say, please, administrator of this machine, write everything you want to have backed up in the file /etc Bareos backup list, for example, and you just have to fill in all the subdirectories that need to be backed up there, and they will be automatically backed up, and the administrator can remove lines, add lines, and do whatever he wants, and he does not have to bother anyone else, and everything will be exactly backed up as specified there. So that is already possible.
Mm-hmm. I thought about the knowledge from Spectrum Protect, not for normally backup, it's for archiving. It was used in Spectrum Protect or Tivoli in former days for the archiving, which was done manually and not automatically, and for that reason only, and not for permanent like backup. Only like, okay, when I finished some large project or some PhD student goes away, this is the time where like archives were made for a longer time.
Yeah, but running a backup not automatically, but only manually, and only manually exactly with the mechanism that I just told you is absolutely possible already in Bareos. And if you then write it to a certain pool that has warm tapes, for example, then you could also do it exactly like you say for archiving. I don't know, does Spectrum Protect afterwards, does Spectrum Protect delete the files that you specified there after they have been backed up?
No. Spectrum Protect saves my archive under the specific name I can define, and saves it in the database, and so I can go.
But this is not moved into the archive.
No, it's not moved. It's not moved. It's copied.
Then it can do exactly what we do, because we also cannot remove it right now after we backed it up.
No, just not using the web UI, so that's not possible.
Yes, okay. Yeah, that was my question.
Interesting.
It was easy browsable. It should be easy browsable for normal persons.
Yeah, for sure. We are also thinking about features like adding a client using the web UI, but yeah, it is also important to have a good API in the backend, which could be also used for automation purposes, as we have clients which use configuration management tools like Ansible or Puppet to automatically configure Bareos. That's also important to maintain this possibility. So we have another question regarding the Bareos company. Are there informations on the financial situation of the Bareos company? Can it currently be assumed that the company can support the product for a long time, 5 or 10 years at least? Yes, exactly. Jörg says in Germany there are laws that require limited companies of certain size to publish financial reports that can be publicly viewed.
Yeah, that's the one thing. The other thing is one of the true values of being true open source is, even if I don't like to get out of business, but if I go out of business, our source code still is free, and every other company or single person that has the capability of do development and consulting on open source software can run and maintain the software, even if we are out of business. That's exactly the true value about being open source. So
yes,
you are not bound to us. You are not bound to us. If you don't like us, you can also run it yourself or ask someone else to do so. Of course, we are happy to be here, and I'm very sure that we also will be here in 10 years. But in the end, it's the freedom of choice, and absolutely you can be sure of your investment, because you don't have to stop using the backup software only because we are not there or you don't like what we do.
Yeah, if, for example, compared to proprietary software, yeah, there you may have to imply a license to your software which has expiration, and if that expiration hits, then it stops working. And yeah, this is not going to happen with Bareos. But for sure, we are planning to maintain the company for even longer. So that's
for the
our
next
main
100
purpose.
years.
Exactly. For the next 100 years, yeah, if possible. Okay, here we have another technical related question. A client sends unencrypted data to a storage daemon. Does the storage daemon still encrypt the volume data? If not, would it still be possible to implement server-side data encryption in the future? Yeah, that's something we have also already thought about, and yeah, we maybe Philipp or Andreas can say something about that.
Yeah,
so only the storage daemon should be able to encrypt. As we still have network transport encryption, as you probably all know already. But yeah, and currently the storage daemon is not able to encrypt the data that it stores. But yeah.
Yeah, so there are different options. One is we do support hardware encryption on LTO tapes. So you can use the LTO hardware encryption with full tape speed to write encrypted tapes. That's the first thing that comes into my mind. Secondly, you can, of course, write to an encrypted disk on your server, so that if you have a server running an encryption file system that we store the data on, then also, of course, if someone steals just the disks, he will not be able to recover it without having the encryption key. That's the two things that come quickly into my mind. Andreas, do you have something else?
Yeah, so we already have discussed that internally, but as there was not enough visible demand for that, we didn't do that. So we have all the infrastructure that we need to do encryption on the SD for every kind of data that we move, because the key management and everything is in place for the LTO stuff. So the only thing that is missing is basically the module or the plugin that does the encryption, which is probably not too hard to do, but as always with encryption, you want to have it thoroughly reviewed by somebody who knows. That's why that has not happened yet. But if somebody says, we absolutely need that, we want that, then it can happen. So there's no technical hurdle for that besides no immediate incentive to implement it right now.
Yeah, but maybe I can also say how it currently works. So first, all data that is transported over the network is per default encrypted with TLS. Then also it is possible to make the client already encrypted with an individual client key. So if you need to have encrypted backups, you can have them even individually encrypted for every client individually. So even the administrator of the backup server will not be able to access the data that he backed up and recovered unless he has access to the key. So that's something we can already do. So even two different clients can have two individual backup keys, and you cannot restore from one to the other or the other way around. And that is super flexible. And also it distributes the load of the encryption to the client, which can be demanding on the client, but in these days with multi-core CPUs, it's not a big problem usually. And that is something that is already in place, and probably the cause why we didn't have much demands on doing encryption on the storage side, because you can already do it very flexible individually for every client, or even you can, of course, also use the same key for all clients if that makes sense in your environment. But that is already very flexible and makes sure that the data is already encrypted when it leaves the client. So the data itself is already encrypted and transported and stored. And even someone that has access to the storage daemon or can crack the TLS channel, for example, gets only encrypted data in the stream.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that, okay, one thing is that as you may have noticed that we have deduplication friendly storage backup since Bareos 24 already. For sure, if you try to backup encrypted or compressed data, then the deduplication it won't work anymore. But I think ZFS, for example, would be able to store the data on the disk encrypted, and this way is the deduplication would also still work when using ZFS, for example, and enabling deduplication and encryption on the ZFS side. Or am I wrong, Andreas?
No, that's exactly right. And you can also enable compression. So the problem when you mix and match encryption, compression, and deduplication is that the only way that works is deduplicate first, then compress, and then encrypt, because in any other order, it won't work. So either compression doesn't work or deduplication doesn't work. So that makes things a bit harder.
Yeah, and also every kind of encryption, of course, makes it much harder in a disaster recovery case to access your data, which is also a very important part of backing up. You need to be able to recover the data reliably, and usually you are happy if you don't need so many information, and if you need to have access to 10 different client individual keys that you somehow need to get out of your safe and on the client to get the recovery done. That's also something that you will probably then really test much more than just simple recovery. So it always depends on what the security demand is, of course. But if you have a key that you have in a backup that has been encrypted with the same key and you don't have the key somewhere else, then of course you will not ever access your data anymore. And that's things that we know at least from other backup vendors that this happens. So yes, encryption always adds more complexity, and complexity makes recovery harder. So that's why you always have to think about if it really makes sense to do it like this or not, or where you put the keys, of course.
Yeah,
but yes,
exactly.
That's of course depending on what you need in your environment.
Yeah, I just remember that I mentioned S3 storage, and I mentioned the DPL compat. DPL compat is a storage backup which allows the Bareos storage daemon to store backups on S3 or S3 compatible storage. Like, for example, Ceph using Rados GW provides the S3 interface, or there are lots of public cloud offerings that are offering S3 storage, which could be used to store backups. And therefore, for this purposes, it would be nice if the Bareos SD could encrypt the backup, because you usually don't want to store unencrypted backups on cloud storage. The only current way, I think, that many providers are offering so-called server-side encryption, but then you have to provide the encryption key to the storage provider, which may not be sufficient for security purposes. And but the other way, what I wanted to say is, when you want to backup data which resides on cloud storage like S3, especially for S3 compatible storages, we have also renovated the libcloud. It's a FD plugin. It's called the libcloud plugin, which we have renovated to make it work with more modern Python versions. So now it is possible again to back up data which is stored on S3 compatible storage somewhere in the cloud to your Bareos backup infrastructure. Yeah, any further questions? Okay.
Maybe I then have a question about a question. There was this question about example configurations, which we can do now, and about different use cases. So the question for me would be, what would you like to see in an example configuration? Maybe this is a question for everyone, so we can get some idea about what we should put there. So maybe you can think a bit about that and then give somewhere else.
Yeah, I either provide this feedback on asynchronously in a GitHub discussion or in the users mailing list. And I see that we still have another question, technical question. The director starts a job. Client data is collected and sent to the storage daemon. What happens to data that changes while the client collects the data? Is changed data during the process included into the backup?
So no. The question is no. On Windows, as VSS snapshot is done, and after the snapshot, this data does not change anymore. On Linux, it will only take files that have a timestamp newer than the start time of the job, if it's an incremental, or it will back up every file that is there. And in case that a file, for example, is growing while it is being backed up, you get a warning, and then it will read until the end of the file. For example, if it's a log file that gets more data appended. And other than that, it goes recursively to the files and will back up what it finds. And if in the directory that it already visited before something is changed, it will not be picked up.
Yeah, so if I understood it right, it first crawls the whole file system and directory tree and then determines what to back up, or is it happening in parallel?
It happens synchronously. So it finds a file, it opens it, it reads it, it backs it up, then it goes to the next one. That's how it's currently working. And we do have some optimization there that it at least does something in parallel, but in principle, it does not determine the files to back up completely independent of the backup stream. That's something also we think about how we can implement that.
On a Linux system, that's the way it works, because we don't have this issue like on Windows that we can't access files which are opened even only read-only. In Linux, we don't have this problem, so we don't need some snapshot mechanisms here. I mean, what you could do is just use incremental backups and maybe more frequent incrementals, which then pick up the files which didn't make it in the previous backup.
I don't know if it's related, but that's why we have some plugin, for example, for database, which are changing all the time. So we use the snapshotting mechanism of the database to be consistent, to have a consistent backup.
Yeah. Here the question is especially what happens to data that changes while the client collects the data. So yeah, it's it depends on the application for sure. And for database application, there are many ways to address this, like use pre-backup script, which creates a dump of the database, which is then in a consistent state. Or what is also still possible is, for example, using LVM snapshots, or just if it's possible, you could stop a service, then take the backup, and then start the service again if it doesn't need to run 24/7, and if you can have a backup window for that service to make sure that you get a consistent backup of that data. So that highly depends on the application that could cause files increasing during backup. But yeah, there may be cases where this is just not easily possible. Okay, so here we have a remark regarding Sebastian Lederer's question. Yes, it would be a good idea to have like a GitHub discussion for collecting example cases. I myself am a Bareos beginner and maybe have same use cases, some use cases that may help others in the future. Yeah, thank you very much. You're welcome to contribute. We are also for sure open for contributions all the time. We get more and more contributions on GitHub also, and participants in the users mailing list. So that's for sure.
For general questions, the users mailing list is probably the best place.
It's better than the GitHub discussions.
Is if you have a specific topic or want to discuss it with somebody, then the GitHub discussions is the right place.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we don't have any